No, not by the time it loads. Loading. Your internet.
Oh, yeah.
We need to keep moving these so eventually they just touch. And it'll be like a, and then the face to face.
All right.
Okay, we are.
7 o'clock.
He said
He was right, isn't it? All right. I hereby call to order the regular Board of Education meeting for Milburn CC School District 24 at 7 p.m. Madam Secretary, may we have a roll call, please? Here.
Randy Murphy,
Here.
Peter Petrini,
Here.
Julie Phelps. Here. John Reynolds,
Here.
Fred Spectrum,
Here.
and Lisa Booster. Here.
All right. Let's rise from the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, Madam Secretary, do we have any public comments?
That
We do not. Okay. All right, is there any addition of non-action items? Nothing? All right, action items. 6A, approved district goals.
Okay, presented them at the last meeting, we talked about it. If there's any questions before the board takes action, happy to discuss them. But you're there.
I move to approve the district goals.
second.
There's no money. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Perfect. All right. We have the consent agenda.
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Thank you, Jillian. Since it is money, Madam Secretary, will you call the roll, please?
Randy Murphy,
Yes.
Peter Petrini,
Yes.
Julie Phelps.
Yes.
John Reynolds,
Yes.
Fred Spectrum,
Yes.
Lisa Booster.
Yes.
And John Lorenzen.
Yes.
Yes.
All right, information discussion, attendance handbook presentation.
Okay, board, we have a presentation, Mr. Walshire is gonna present tonight on our attendance handbook that, our administrative team has been working on. Attendance is becoming an increasingly concerning issue for us, not just for Milburn School, but across the state, as Ben's gonna share later, but it's, we want to be proactive and take action. We want kids who need to be here to be here. If kids are sick, we want them to stay home, but if kids are not sick, we want them in school as many days as possible, so. We'll present what we've got so far.
Maybe it's they're all that in a minute, so I'm gonna try to do this.
Did I take too many of your
That's
minutes?
good.
Yeah. All right, so, actually, I wanna give kudos to Ms. Rowland, who really took the lead on this for us, who, asking a lot of questions about what we do as a district, and some questions what we do with both buildings. And he brought the idea of something that he worked on in his last school, was really having some guidance, not just for communication with parents, but also, something that is for us as a district, so that we're consistent. So in front of you is the attendance counts prevention planning guide. Before we start, I just want to let you know, this is a draft, so this is not finalized or anything like that. We're still, working with our teams to kind of see what are some things we need to tweak. Obviously, we wanted to keep you all updated on our progress, and obviously, if you have any thoughts behind these things, and we're not gonna go page by page, but I kind of want you to understand why, the need for this approach. So one of the first things, I want to make sure that you truly understand is the difference between chronic absenteeism and truancy. Chronic absenteeism is any absence from school, whether it be excused or unexcused. And to make it chronic, student will have to miss 10% of the school year to be considered chronically absent. So really, when it comes to our school days, we have 177 days, so we look at 17 days of school that we look at, and those are actually, we report our numbers to the state every single year with how many are identified as chronically absent. Where truancy is, I'm not gonna say it's harsher, but there's more legality behind truancy, where that's an unexcused absence. And so when we have a student who has no reason for not coming to school, or they don't call, or it's not a valid reason, it becomes unexcused and becomes a truant day. Once a student gets the 9 unexcused days, that is then a prompt for the school district to report a truancy referral to the regional office of education, and we work with them then to look at improving that attendance. So 2 different, I just want to make sure, because oftentimes some people get confused between the difference between chronic absenteeism and truancy. Chronic absenteeism is excused and unexcused today. So, any questions you have, man?
I remember maybe in high school, activities, if we went away on an activity, how was that scored?
Be a little bit more.
Like a
So,
sporting
school activity.
School act, like a sports, you know,
Since that's a school related function,
yeah,
it's counted as a,
it's counted as what?
you're in school.
Okay.
So oftentimes, sometimes sports leave a little bit early and things like that,
Yeah.
it's still marked as a full day.
Okay.
But if it's a non-sponsored school event and you're on a traveling softball team and you leave, that makes it an absence. So if we start looking at, all right, where are we at, where are we standing? So really, we look at data, right? And so chronic absenteeism is something that that we report to the state, we've done it since 2017-18 school year. And so this is the data of the entire school district. So this is both elementary and middle school, dating back to 2017-18. We're looking at the percentage of students in the district identified as chronically absent. So the first number you see in each of those dates is our school percentage. In parentheses is what the state average is. So I'll let you have a moment to take a look at that. But one of the things you should note is that chronic absenteeism has been growing. It's not just Melbourne, it's around the state. And so, although the number is still below the state average, it's still a growing concern all around. So it's not just a Melbourne concern. And obviously, Dr. Lynn and I were kind of looking at this, and now you look at, all right, everyone usually starts with where the pandemic is. And so that is labeled for the 2019-20 school year, where you can see a 2.9%. Now, we also talked about, like, well, 3 of the months we didn't report any absences because everyone was at home and things like that. And then the following year, we had the hybrid year, which they chose to be either remote, or a combination of both, being in person. So we did have great attendance that year. We also had wonderful behaviors that year too. But then after that year, that's when you saw the escalation. But that's where we're seeing with numbers. Now, we do have our numbers for the district at 18%, so about the same as last year. We do not know what the state average is. They haven't reported that out, but we anticipate that usually comes end of September, 1st October, when we get the school ratings the previous year. So as we look at those numbers, it's actually a big part of our school rating. So I kind of want to break down. Oh, actually, we'll say I'm going to follow on. So as we kind of break down, so yeah, we have our numbers of students, but then we look at individual students too. So I always ask the front office at the end of the year, can you give me a list of students that were chronically absent this past year? And then I look at the year before that and the year after that. So this is a 3-year comparison. And this is not the full list. This is just a screenshot of a little bit. So each of those rows represents a student. If you see a line that's red all the way across, that means that's a student that's been chronically absent 3 years in a row. In yellow, it's 2 out of the 3 years. We also are kind of noting we do have a growing number of students that exit the country for extended period of time throughout the course of the school year. They are still currently enrolled when they leave with us, but it is marked as an absent day. So kind of telling the story about what's the number. Last year we had, out of that 18%, I can at least tell you at the elementary, we had 121 students, that were chronically absent last year. So that's roughly, it's actually matched up with the district average of 18% of the school population. Obviously, a variety of reasons. Everyone has a story, so we take that into consideration, either being out of the country, medical concerns and things like that. And going into this, we're not looking at necessarily dropping down to zero. We know their absences happen. Dr. Lynn said if somebody's sick, they need to stay home. But how do we decrease this number the best we can? And so right now it's sorted by the total number of days out of the last 3 years. And you can see we've had students that are at 125 days in this school 3 years in a row. And so I look at that as kind of a first step. Let's tackle those individuals and kind of see if we can stop that pattern from going into a fourth year if we can. So we look at that piece of data and actually break it down by individual students. But where does it go when it comes to our school rating? And so I do want to kind of share how this works. I know you see different bar graphs and colors. That top bar graph represents how they calculate each school's rating every single year. And even though you can't see it, I'll kind of highlight what the colors mean. So, think of this as a total of 100 points, okay? And so in blue, 7.5 points goes towards your ELA proficiency. Students that are proficient or advanced on IAR. And then in orange is ELA growth. So now they look at all the students and they look at from 1 year to the next, how much do they grow? Do they stay in their same proficiency level? Do they jump to the next proficiency scale or proficiency level? So a bigger chunk with growth when it comes to ELA. Then in gray, that's math proficiency. That's math proficient or advanced. That's 7.5 points. In yellow is math growth. So definitely weighted more than the achievement aspect. In the next blue, that's attendance. That's chronic absenteeism. So that's weighted a lot. That's worth 20 points. 5 points is science proficiency. The next blue is school climate. And then in orange is your multilingual proficiency on the IAM. So that's a total of 100 points. So the next bar graph down, so what I ended up doing is I wanted to look at, all right, what was considered, I always wanted to see what we can get to be the exemplary status. Where do we need to focus our attention on? And so when I looked at what the cut score was last year, and when you click one last line, Jason, just click your arrow so you can see that. So that's where the line was last year, which was considered, if you get 81.42 points or above, you were considered exemplary in the state. Now, this is not the same score every single year. It's a moving score because they only give exemplary status to the top 10% of schools in the state. So who knows? That score might be lower this year. It might be higher. So we're not sure, but that's where the score was last year. So what I ended up doing is prorating each of those areas to kind of see where at the minimum score you need to get to try to do proficient. Now, obviously, if you get more than one, and hopefully you compensate from another area. So that's where the breakdown happens, and I'm not going to go through each one of those. But the third box, and I only did Milburn Elementary, that's where we fell in 2023. And so out of the ELA proficiency, we got all 7.5 points. ELA growth, we got 21 out of 25 points. Math proficiency, we got the full points, 7.5 points. Math growth, we actually got 17 out of 25. So that was kind of a lower area for us. And then in chronic absenteeism, we got 13 out of 20. And so the rest of them, science proficiency, got all the points. School climate, we got 4 out of 5. And then ML proficiency, we got 3 out of 5. So when you look at those areas, the big areas that we took a big hit, math growth and absenteeism. And so that's then starts the journey of where we want to start seeing some improvement. So obviously you've heard from the math committee, we started a new math program this year, hoping that's going to help with our math growth. But now what are we going to do about chronic absenteeism? Because our total points, we had 78 points. So we were only just over 3 points away from exemplary status. So obviously we can look at other areas, but those are the biggest areas that we want to see. Any questions about how the school status and school rating is calculated? I wanted to make it sure you had a visual so you can understand.
Is this gonna stay constant year to year?
No.
In the score,
Where it's 20, because that's crazy, because, simply because of COVID. If you look at pre-COVID, we're like every 7, 9, whatever. COVID got everybody scared to send their kids to school with just a simple, and then school said stay home. So I think that's part of it. And that's a big number,
It's
20 out of.
weighted a lot.
So do we know if they're gonna try to move that down?
I have not heard anything that they're doing that. I think that they wanna really tackle, since it's a growing concern in the state. I think they wanna put a little pressure on districts to see what districts can do to help with the state concern, if that makes sense.
And then with growth, are you setting a new benchmark every year? Is that kind of, it's hard, obviously, it's hard to maintain huge growth year to year, because you grow so much, then it's, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Is there a benchmark for that, or is it just the previous year? So if you knock it out of the park one year,
Then
then kind of
start-
holds for the next, you know what I mean?
Possibly.
So that's how that works too.
Yeah.
So, okay, that would expect. But if we got 21 year before, I could see how we would.
Mhm. So yeah, so based on what I know, my understanding when it comes to student growth, when they look at, let's look at, so 2023. All students 3rd through 8th grade, they got a designated level on Iowa. So that's, let's say they're starting. Then the 2024, we just took it this past spring, they're gonna see how many kids from the basic level went up to the proficient level. They're looking at how many kids are making the next step up on that. So they're looking at all the kids where they're not weighting the proficiency, those 7.5 points. That's just the kids that are scoring proficient or advanced. They want to look at all the kids, which I think that's why they're waiting to vote, because they're looking at all of them. So if your child received a rating on ELA and IR, and it's the lowest rating, hope is they're gonna go up to the next level. They may not be proficient yet, but at least the next proficiency to really push that growth within schools and in the state. But yeah, when it comes, I was shocked when we learned how much absenteeism was weighted. And so that's really like, okay, why do we take such a big hit? Now you start looking at our data, what can we do to start picking away so we're getting closer to the points that we can. Again, we're not trying to get all the points, but can we get 3 points this year? Instead of having 13 points, can we get the 16 points? Because that prorated, that middle of our graph, they're saying, you know, that proration, if you can get down to 60 points, you're still in good shape.
Yeah, with so much growth in there, that's gonna be, and then they're taking the top 10%, it's gonna be hard to be consistently.
So, moving along then, so what do we need to do to really start taking some action steps when it comes to chronic absenteeism? Which goes into the attendance counts graph that you have in front of you. So as we start looking at this, and one of the things we've learned in our journey is we need to be consistent within our practices, both at the elementary and also at the middle school, with our actionable steps. So that's one of the things why we need to have this guidebook. The other thing is equity. As we start looking at we start reflecting on what we've done with attendance, we discovered we weren't necessarily equitable with how we approach attendance. You know, you might be spending a lot of time working with this one student, this one family, because maybe they have a historical trend of being absent. But then all of a sudden you look back on that, well, you have a student, maybe who was doing good in school, quiet. And in some cases, they're very bright, but they had the same number of absences as that when we were working. Now you're making that inequity, right? So we need to make sure, no matter what their background is or anything like that, we follow the same practices for all of our students. So that's another reason why we wanted to create this guidebook. And then, of course, the biggest prevention, how can we decrease that number of chronic absenteeism? We also need to make sure that we have clear-cut definition. What is considered an excused absence from school? Is it spelled out? So that our parents and our families know this is what a valid reason is to miss school. And then also the actionable steps. That's where we want to make sure there's equity. When certain students hit those thresholds of 5 days, 7 days, so that we're not waiting for that last minute where now we're taking those steps and it's already day 15 and they're only 2 days away from being chronically absent. So we want to make sure that we're taking some proactive steps before they reach those numbers. Obviously, there's some situations we can't do. I can tell you right now, we have students that are currently out of the country. They're not gonna get back till the end of September. By the time they even start the first day of school, they're already defined as chronically absent. Because every day they're missing. It's an excused absence, they told us. But it doesn't matter, it's still an absent day. And once they hit that 17 days, they're already chronically absent for the rest of the year. Even if they have perfect attendance, when the day they get back, the last day of school. So, those are some things that we just, I'm not gonna say we're battling, but it's something we have to work through. And continue to talk about and see if we can use that. So those are the reasons why we want to create this prevention guide. And then, so what are we gonna do this year? The school year's already started, we're in day 4. This hasn't been pushed out to parents. Obviously, we still got some work to do. Again, this is in draft form, but we're gonna consider this our pilot year. There's gonna be some things that we do when it comes to the action steps. One of the first things we've already created is an attendance team at each building, and we're gonna be meeting weekly. That attendance team involves admin, social workers, nurse, and our attendance manager. Who can pull the data for us to kind of look at where our numbers are at. And then start making those notes. What are these actual steps we need to take on certain students? Now, this is where you start talking about individual students because the nurse is going to have some background. And then maybe we don't need to take those steps because we have a background and some information behind it. So it's not going to be a blanket all. Once you hit 5 days, everyone's doing that. It's still going to be differentiated based on the information that we have. But the team's going to get together and talk about that and then decide what's our next steps. So in that document, you can see some of our ideas, what we're doing with those thresholds once we get to.
Do we record what type of excused absences they are?
Yes, we do.
Okay, do we analyze that?
We haven't yet. We haven't yet.
Because
That's one of those things.
there's a difference between, hey, this kid's got who knows what health issue, can't come to school for a day or two a week because he has to go to the doctor versus, hey, we're going on vacation as you said, for the first 20 days of the school year. Like, do we have a breakdown of, okay, vacation, sickness, whatever.
That's where our attendance manager. will
Death
tell
of
those stories,
family.
Because there's a lot of times like, yeah, you can see that, you can pull a spreadsheet and you just see excused, unexcused.
Right.
And she has the breakdown, that's where her notes come into play, what's in our power school system. You
Okay.
can really see. Because there's somebody, especially the individuals, let's say. Year after year. Year after year, they take once in a lifetime vacations, year after year.
Right.
It beats the whole once in a lifetime vacations that's happening every year, which I get, there are some families. Going on those trips because it's cheaper in October,
Yeah.
that's when they want to do that. And so then we start looking at, all right. That's a great opportunity. We never want to stall a family saying, don't go on that trip. Maybe that works out for their family. But what's happening outside that week for gone?
Right.
Is there other days that are building up that when they're gone that week, that's not helping if they've already had an increase of attendances outside of that week.
Right.
So you really have to ask those questions, break down even further to kind of see, are we seeing patterns?
Right.
And that's where we have to try to be equitable. Yes, we might have some families that we know that are never calling in. I mean, that's always a red flag for us. Or it's always the same reason, or if we have to ask for a doctor's notes, we find out after all these doctor's notes, it's from 17 different doctors. And, then you start asking yourself, like, does the regular pediatrician not know really what's going on with this child? So we've seen a gamut of different things that have come our way. But that's where that team's gonna get together and kind of see, all right, what's the story? We need to do more investigating what's going on before we take those steps. We want to be sure these are reasonable steps for that particular student.
Have we done that for students or like on a national level, I get it, if you normally if your attendance is low, if your scores are lower. But how is it at Melbourne? Because, and I'm just one of them, I don't know if there's more like me, but I tell my daughter if she gets all threes or my son, if he's on straight A's, I'm gonna let you take a day of school and you get back.
Yeah.
For that. So that's.
Well, I can tell you, looking at that spreadsheet that has the lines for each one of the students. There's things that I see right off the bat, and I know there's certain students that have been on the most intensive interventions for the last 3 years. We're giving them everything we got when it comes to pull-out support, every day, 30 minutes a day. And they're not making as much progress that we would hope. But as I was talking to grade level team last week, and I was sharing, some attendance, data with them. Is that the first step of intervention? Get them into the school first, because if somebody's missing a month of school every single year, that has to make a substantial impact in their learning progress. But on the flip side, I've seen students on the list that 90th percentile in math. And they're very high achieving, but they have a history of being chronically absent. So, obviously, what they might be doing well, I'm not gonna say they're getting by or anything like that. I'm sure the parents are supporting things like that, but are we maximizing everything we can get to that student who can be at their highest potential? What further can that student, that high achiever can be if they were here a month long?
So do we have that correlation? I mean,
Not necessarily both.
at Milburn, I mean, so it's not necessarily if you're chronically absent, you're, for the most part, that's with a underperforming. Lower performing students, right? Or it's just really all.
Right now, I could say our previous practice, usually those students don't come up unless it's making a impact. That's typically which now makes it inactive. If that's the ones that we're taking those action steps with, if it's impacting the learning. Where the other ones, it may not be, and then I don't want to say we lose them through the cracks, but those are the ones you don't hear about. And so that's why if we look at data on a consistent basis, we're gonna make sure that nobody's slipping through the cracks. That if it's from a low achieving student to a high achieving student, how do we make sure that that we maximize everything we can provide? Because even if they're a high achieving student, we can get them even higher, and it's only helping us even on a rating scale. So, but I haven't taken that list and really broken down where they had it happening. So that's our plan for this year. We actually just introduced this to our attendance team last week. To make sure we get their viewpoints. Because also, the other aspect too, that we want to be on the same page is working with our nurses. That which I've had many different parents reach out to me when I reach out to them about attendance. You say, well, you're sending them home all the time and saying they can't come back for 24 hours. And so there's a balance, like, yes, there's some protocols we need to make sure that there's no spread of anything. But let's talk about it. Let's have a good relationship. If you're constantly being sent home because of that, is there something else we can do to help support? Do we need some of the actual steps might be, can we start working together as a team? Maybe we bring in a position and you be part of the discussion, not necessarily they're going to be available for a meeting. At least maybe a research information so we can really kind of talk what's going on. Make sure, because we don't want to be like really hounding them if there's really something that's there, but it all comes down to communication. What kind of communication we're getting? What kind of team aspect are we working with? Not just our attendance team, but bringing in families. So we're all working together because we do have supports in place. First, especially ones that are top tier of intervention, which we call wraparound services, where that's the team that comes together and works with that family. They meet on a regular basis. At times they go to the home and kind of see is there some things that we can do to support them, because every child has a different reason why they're not coming to school on a regular basis. And I can at least tell you on an elementary end, based on my experience, 80% of the time it's out of the student's hands why they're not coming to school. And so now that's what you're really working with parents about, why aren't they bringing them to school? Which could be transportation, it could be other different aspects. So we work with them. It might be, you need childcare and that. What can we do to work with you so you can get them here early, be on working schedules and things like that. Or sending the bus, hey, they missed the bus. We'll come out there at 8:15 after school starts to make sure they get in. But communicate with us. We're not going to say, "Oh, sorry, you missed the bus." Like, we're really helping families out there. So that's a quick overview of what our draft plan is, what steps we're going to do this year. And again, I do want to give this role kudos for this because he's the one that brought it to our attention. Did the investigating about what's going on in each building, and then that brought us together to kind of really see what we're going to do with the district. Make sure we're consistent. So no matter what child, grade level in, building they're in, families know what the expectation is. And I know, even if you look at some of those action steps, for some, it's gonna hit them right in the face. Like, whoa. And maybe that might deter an absence, but as I talked, we're talking to our parents a few weeks ago. And because that's a subgroup, over the years, that has the highest number of absences. Which there are many variables why. Building their immunity when they get sick a lot easier, especially if they haven't been in a childcare setting or daycare setting. This is their first time being around others, and so I get that, but that's been that has been settling increasingly the last few years. So, so I just emphasize, I didn't want to say send them if they're sick, but you know, it's just that little simple that doesn't mean it's. So I just want to make sure they understand.
Oh, high schools up there too, or that you have, or is it what's your case, right?
I haven't,
You know, Jason?
No, I don't.
the only thing I can, based on my experience, working in another district, is, I know that, as you start getting older, now it's more the student's responsibility to go to school. You know, there's a little bit more things that have in place, especially if they have an SRO. An SRO sometimes will issue a citation if somebody has an excuse and make sure they, especially the truancy accident. Where there are citations you can give to a child. If it's truly, they're the one that, well, obviously, elementary, we're not gonna do that here in this aspect, but, I just know that working with previous high school, that's really kind of deterred some students that when they're in school. They know someone's right there and they can just. I'm not saying that's not
18% is high.
I have a question. We generally mark it down at the change occurring in COVID. Is where the peak is, yeah. Is there any policy that we changed prior to COVID? That we could go back and say, hey, we did this before COVID, we changed it because of COVID. What if we bring it back? Like, is there anything?
We didn't change anything.
Okay,
Not-
no, that's,
The only thing that we made sure we reviewed and looked at when it comes to a half day versus a full day. And I'm sorry, I don't have this right now. Let me see if that's correct. So, for the students to be marked part the school, the school, they have to be in, they have to come into school after the start of the school day and not miss more than 30 minutes of their school day to be considered part. If they miss 31 minutes up to 150 minutes, that's considered a half day. And if you miss anything over 151 minutes, that is considered a full day. So could that play a factor in some of that? Possibly, because when you start looking at 151 minutes, that's 2.5 hours. So if somebody leaves at 10:30, so we still got 4 hours up to the school day. They were there for 2.5 hours. If they leave at 10:30, that's a full day they missed. Because they've now missed 4 hours. So that's one of the things that maybe could play a factor. When we did that a few years ago, it was right around the time of COVID. And we made sure like, all right, what's our half day? And those are all based on state.
okay, yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And it's based on their ages too, because at middle school, it's a different amount when it comes to half day versus full day because of the ages. But, is that the reason why it's no over numbers? I don't. But not, no policy aspect of it.
Okay.
Well, feel free to look through that, reach out if you have questions or anything like that along our way, you know, if there's something that's confusing, because obviously we want to get things in the hands of parents at the start of next school year. But again, we're using it as a pilot year to kind of what's working with us, and are we being too aggressive, or do we need to, be a little bit more aggressive? That's what we're kind of engage, and so that's kind of, this is our starting point. This is those actions.
So this is for the next year?
Well, we're gonna pilot some of these action steps, but since we're still in the process of looking at this, and it's really, you know, it's really unfair to say this is what it is, we're a week in the school. We wanna get this in their hands of parents over the summer. This is our plan, what we wanna do to start the school year. So this year, we're gonna be piloting, trying some of these things, obviously looking at data, having the communication aspect. We might be doing some actual steps, especially when we start looking at our historical data of students that have a history of chronic absenteeism. those might be the groups that we target first. These actions.
Quickly going through it, there's a few things on here that I'm not 100% sold on. One of them is the tier 3 PBIS recognition, recognizing students with perfect attendance. With names in the newspaper and public postings. There are many issues that students might not have perfect attendance, being sick or observing some other religious holidays. So in effect, by rewarding people, and then parents might send their kids to school when they should be kept home. So we might be essentially, by not rewarding them, we're punishing them for being sick or for observing some of their religious holidays. And then, so that can lead them to be disengaged with the school process. If like, oh, I can't get this award that my peers are getting, so why should I try harder in other areas? So that's just something that I think we should not include as a reward, perfect attendance rewards.
And I can tell you, Fred, that that's something that we do not do here at elementary. We don't have a perfect attendance reward. In fact, they said this to our new families when they came out of orientation. I'm not expecting perfect attendance. This is adults. Not missing a day of school is really tough, when you have a job. But what I always aim for is strive for 5. Try not to go over 5 days. Some days that we can't, but so we can have that as a kind of a reasonable goal. That's great, but we don't give out special medals or anything like that. Because it's sensitive, people can.
It said it in here, that's why.
Yeah.
The other thing was requiring a doctor's note after 3 consecutive days of absences, that especially with elementary school, you need to have a parent home. I think that creates an unnecessary burden on them. Okay, they're sick 3 days. Now I gotta get into a doctor's note before they can come back in. I just think that creates an unnecessary barrier, possibly even a cost.
No, that's not to get them into school though. I want them
Just to
sure.
remove it.
No, that's to have it become excused versus unexcused. So that documents, and I think that's in the state code.
Oh, that's the state code.
We'll check.
Double check that, but that's only to remove it, to count it as, excused absences.
So they can bring it back a month later.
Take them back
during
whenever.
their semi-annual physical.
There are
Yeah.
times that,
Yeah,
will be provided after the fact, after they come back to school. We just go back to the documentation after those are excused.
Right, just so and that helps with, if we're referring somebody to truancy, that officer at the ROE. That would keep us from referring them if we have excused absences, if those are unexcused.
Fred, did you think you couldn't bring your student back?
The way
I
it
did.
seemed. Yeah,
Until someone told me that.
My-
I'm
my-
like, man, I gotta go pay for a doctor's note, and I know like a doctor visit to get a note, and I know my kid's not sick anymore, and I
That's what it seemed like,
I was like, okay, whatever it is.
my son was in the hospital this last year and he missed, unfortunately, a lot of days.
I don't know if everybody knows that, so. I found it out years ago,
Yeah,
um,
that's good feedback.
I know, and last, I'm not saying this is a case or anything like that, but there have been times that to make sure that if they're, especially if, I'm gonna say that this is the most popular, but our protocols are if a child turns up in the school. They can't return to school for 24 hours, so if it happened at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, more like they're not gonna happen, they're not gonna come back the next day. But sometimes we've been challenged by families saying, oh, they're fine, it's because of something that happened, things like that. That's when we ask for, well, then we need to get parents from to make sure, because we're trying to be sure that there's nothing that's gonna spread. So that, there's sometimes that we do ask for that for them to return to school, if it's before a certain timeline, but not necessarily a blanket one, like, you have to have one if you're sick for 3 consecutive days, you have to have one.
so if they were, something happened at noon, and you're like, well, you can't come back for 24 hours, I know it's fine, in order to get in school and say that they can cover it.
So that's happened before, so I don't know if that was.
And so I don't know, but I know the first time I just like, don't pay for it either.
Yeah.
So.
Thanks, good question. Any, is that it? Yeah.
Some of them are like talking to kids about importance of. I saw that it was crossed out like the state funding and things like that, but just putting the burden on the kids of our district scores from the state there, that's not at a level that they should burden them about it, so.
Yeah, I can tell you right now, I can share that graph with the kids here. Everything. It's one, like, again, we're promoting attendance, now that we show, like, oh, we look, like, I don't even know if the kids even know about our grading system, they say, try to get things like, that's something we talk about internally as a district. Share with parents, things like that.
Thanks. Good points. There's a reason why we haven't done perfect attendance rewards and you nailed all the reasons why. So, yeah. Something we'll continue to talk about. What did we say?
Thank you. Thank you.
I think old,
Very good.
What?
I think old minute.
It's all right.
All right. Future agenda items.
Okay, upcoming, we have more budget discussions, so we have 2 more meetings before we approve the budget. We have the budget hearing at our regular meeting in September. Prior to that, we have another committee of the whole meeting, our first meeting in September, so if there's any further questions about the budget, we're thinking about that. If you have anything, that's a good time to address that. In September, we will be doing several policies, one of them the Title IX policy, which has been bigger changes this year, so we will be reviewing that in the cow meeting or posting it. Putting it up. If you have any questions about it at that time, Brendan and Peter are looking at it now as far as the committee goes. And then that'll be public and approved. And a lot of that is about training, and our administration's getting training tomorrow, actually, from our attorney group, so. I have more information about what the details are of what it means after that. That's it for future.
All right, superintendent report.
A lot of building things that we're working on, just down the road. There's a law that was passed this summer. I just found out today. I don't know if you talked to Tim at all. This craft about that, but LED lights, so all of these fixtures. Or not LED, the CFL's fluorescent lighting will be out by 2027. They'll be no longer allowed to be sold even at that point, so. We are looking at options for replacing this would be all of the middle school and all of this building at some point. So we were already looking at those options and have been talking about it for a while. We did that in the oldest section a few years ago. We did a lighting upgrade with incentives that were handed out by the state, so they paid for a good chunk of it. We got reimbursed, and of course the district paid a good chunk because it's expensive. But we've been talking about how to do it. There's all kinds of options about what to do, and we'll put together a proposal at some point, and hopefully there'll be some state incentives we can capture along the way.
Don't we have that 50,000
Yeah, that.
matching thing that could we use this?
Yes,
Yes.
but we're looking for, that one is easier to use in other places, like a gym floor. Lighting, because it's an energy savings, ComEd oftentimes has incentives, so. ComEd was who we went through with the other section. And we got the CDAC report, and what was the other report we had? Somebody from ComEd to look at our energy consumption last year to see where we could save and cut back. And then they will have hopefully some incentives to hopefully matching grants to get some of this work done. Because lighting is one of our most significant energy costs as far as electricity during the school year. Pretty huge. There's a lot of lights that are on most of the day. So when we change that, we will definitely see a cost savings in energy moving forward. We're also looking at, in the oldest section of the building, each room has what's called a univent. It's something like that, except most of them are on the ground in the cabinetry. And the controls that operate those vents and control when the hot water comes in and when the cold air dampers open and close. Or fresh air dampers, not cold today. There's fresh air coming into the room. Those are no longer manufactured. They're called BOE units and they don't make them anymore. So if one breaks, we have to take it apart. That unit is down, we send it out to the company, they rebuild it, it's very expensive. So, we're getting some quotes on how do we change that piece of it. So as we upgrade, that would also allow us to buy units that might be more efficient rather than spending $20,000 repairing a unit. If we can buy a whole new one for $23,000, maybe that's a better option for us. What else? It's hot. I don't know if anybody noticed, but just for your awareness, we do follow the child care weather watch heat index from the National Weather Service about when we should send kids out. We have kids inside for recess today, as many of the other school districts in our area did as well. When it gets that hot, it's just hard on kids, so we want to keep them safe. And inside, they'll be inside. I'm anticipating tomorrow for recess. We also use the same map for cold, it's just different version, of course. Registrations, we're still going through some registrations. Veronica this week is working on a report for residency and how that went this year. It was a little bit choppy, going through a new system. But I think overall it turned out pretty well for the district. And while it's not perfect, the message is definitely out that we are checking residencies and putting emphasis on that this year to make sure that we're able to retain the funds for students that we need to provide funds for in our district. And that's all I got. Other than that, everything's going pretty well. And those are going back too.
No reports of any incidents with the HVAC system because of today.
Oh, we have every day, there's a room that's functioning as well as it should. That happens when there's 77 rooms in this building. Each room has its own system, something, either compressor goes down, control goes down. Something happens, damper doesn't work, function. Could be thermostat. Could
Nothing
be
serious.
nothing serious. It's individual stuff.
All right, Carly, you're up.
I have nothing.
Weeds. Man,
That's less than 1 minute.
don't take that personally. I love those reports. Board reports.
Only thing I did was the back to school family bash from Epic at Millennium Park. Dr. Lynn was there. Kids having a good time. Yeah, not too formal of an event, but bouncy house, ice cream truck. Had to see a lot of families again. And all that stuff. Mrs. Krupel was there too. I don't know if there were some other teachers there. I think she got some B-roll from Melbourne News or something like that.
How was the turnout for the parade?
I did not make it this year, but
It was there. It was, yeah. We put a
Do we
bus
have-
actually in the parade to try to recruit all the open positions. Thanks. So it was a good turnout though.
For the Melbourne
Are you asking about Milburn? people?
families that were gonna be in the parade?
Oh, there were probably about, more so with Epic, just maybe closer to a dozen folks in the parade. Lots of Milburn families on the side of the road though, so that was nice to see.
Epic had a nice Mustang convertible there.
Really?
67. Right there.
Very nice.
All right, anything else?
Motion, so.
No, motion is denied. We will not be having closed session. So.
To adjourn?
Motion has been made,
Second.
motion has been seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Good night, everyone, let's go home. Under an hour.
49. Getting it.